Hello students, I welcome you all for my today's class. So today we are going to discuss on a topic of secondary amenorrhea. So the definition of secondary amenorrhea goes like this. It is the absence of menstruation. It is the absence. Amenorrhea means the absence of menstruation. Okay. It is the absence of menstruation for 6 months or more. So the minimum duration is mentioned here, that which is 6 months or more. Maximum it can be for months together or years also. In a woman in whom the normal menstruation has been established, means the woman who used to menstruate before but unable to menstruate afterwards or minimum for 6 months or more, then such a condition is called as secondary amenorrhea. So it is the absence of menstruation for 6 months or more in a woman in whom normal menstruation has been established. So here we are going to discuss on a true secondary amenorrhea, because the physiological amenorrhea part we have already covered in our previous classes of primary amenorrhea, etc. But here we are going to discuss on the true secondary amenorrhea. Etiology: the causes of true secondary amenorrhea with a possible mechanism are given here. The causes may include the uterine factors, ovarian factors, pituitary factors, hypothalamic factors, adrenal factors, thyroid factors, general diseases, and iatrogenic factors. So these are the different causes of secondary amenorrhea. So one by one we'll see. First, about the uterine factors. So in the uterus, if there lies any pathology in the uterus, it may leads to the secondary amenorrhea. So those includes tubercular endometritis. So what happens in this case? Endometritis is the inflammation of the endometrium caused by the tuberculosis. So in this case, what happens? There will be destruction of the endometrium or inhibition of the ovarian function by tubercular toxins. So here the endometrium is destroyed because of the TB. Second is post radiation. Post radiation also there are chances of the destruction of the endometrium if it is exposed to the radiation. Synechia is nothing but the adhesions, especially the intrauterine adhesions, can lead to visurocortical reflex and then leads to the amenorrhea. Then surgical removal, like ablation of the endometrium by laser resectoscope. If she has undergone any surgical procedures of the like removal of the or ablation of the endometrium by razor or any resectoscope methods for previously because of any causes like DUB, etc. in previous, if she has a history of these surgical procedures previously, then she may undergo the secondary amenorrhea as a consequences of those procedures. So these all comes under the uterine factors. Now coming to the ovarian factors, ovarian causes of secondary amenorrhea includes these following. First is the PCOS or the polycystic ovarian syndrome. So what happens in PCOS? PCOS, there will be tonically elevated LH. LH level is elevated, leading to the increased androgen production from the theca cells, or you can say from the PCO cells. So PCO cells produces more androgens, and even with the stroma of the ovaries, so the androgen production is more because of the increased LH, increased androgens are produced, which leads to the decrease in the SHBG protein, serum hormone binding globulin. This is very important. So there will be decrease in the production of SHBG, leading to the increased unbound estrogen and androgen. So when this SHBG reduces, then what happens? There are free androgens as well as free estrogens in the bloodstream. And then what happens? Because of the increased estrogen and androgens in the bloodstream, pituitary sensitivity to the GnRH is increased, leading to the prevention increased production of LH again. So LH is again produced more. Decreased production of FSH due to inhibin, because already estrogen level is high. So what happens? Because of the effect of inhibin, FSH level is reduced. So disturbed adrenal function is also implicated in the androgen axis cases. So a state of hyperandrogenism produces amenorrhea by its anti-estrogenic action. So you can say whenever actually the estrogen and androgen or androgen and estrogen ratio should be normal. So whenever comparatively to compare to the estrogen, whenever the androgen ratios increases, then there will be problem with the cycle. So that is called as a hyperandrogenism, with it leads to the anti-estrogenic action leading to the amenorrhea. So these are the probable mechanism of amenorrhea in cases of PCOS. Another ovarian factor includes premature ovarian failure. So nowadays it is becoming a very common problem nowadays. Premature ovarian failure, in this case what happens? Before reaching the age of menopause, the ovarian reserve is lost. The follicles present in the ovarian is lost even before reaching the age of menopause. Usually the woman attains menopause around 45 to 50 years, even 45 to 50 years of age. But here in the young age only, if all the follicles are depleted, then such a condition is called as a primary ovarian failure. So here what happens, absence of follicles or accelerated rate of the depletion of follicles in the ovary. So when there is no follicles in the ovary, you can understand no production of estrogen, nothing, and the cycles won't be there. So this is one of the cause of amenorrhea. Next is the resistant ovarian syndrome. It is also called as Savage syndrome. Resistant ovarian syndrome. Here what happens, even though follicles are present, but they become resistant to the gonadotrophins. So defect lies in the FSH receptors. Follicles are there, but they are not responding to the gonadotrophins, FSH and LH. Usually the follicle should respond to the gonadotrophins. They have the receptors for the gonadotrophins, but here the receptors are not functioning properly. There lies the defect in the FSH receptors which are present in the follicles. So when these follicles are resistant to the action of gonadotrophin, so there will not be any action. So this condition is called as resistant ovarian syndrome, leading to again the amenorrhea, loss of cycle, loss of the complete physiology, then loss of the everything, like there will not be ovulation, there will not be production of Graafian follicle, there will not be production of corpus luteum, etc. Next condition is hyperestrogenic state. So in certain cases there will be hyperestrogenic state will be there. That means estrogen level is high. When estrogen levels are high, then there lies the problem with the cycle. That means amenorrheic or oligomenoric cycles will be there. So hyperestrogenic states like in persistent follicles in metropathia or feminizing tumors of the ovaries like granulosa cell tumors. In these conditions, there will be hyperestrogen or estrogen levels remains high, and there is no fluctuation as such as long as the endometrial support is not lost, amenorrhea continues. So this may be the cause. And even hyperestrogenic condition is also seen in masculinizing tumors of the ovaries like Sertoli Leydig cell tumor. In this condition again, the androgen excess opposes the effect of estrogen on the endometrium. Then coming to the hypoestrogenic, see both things can lead to amenorrhea, hyperestrogenic state also and hypoestrogenic state also. Hypoestrogenic states can be seen in the ablation of the ovaries and in the pelvic radiation. So ablation and pelvic radiations, what happens in this case, removal of the removal of the site of the production of estrogens will be there, and here ablation of the ovaries and pelvic radiation can make the ovary unresponsive to the gonadotrophins. Here ovary is because of the excessive radiation exposure to the ovaries, or cases of ablation of the ovaries won't respond properly to the gonadotrophins. So because of this hyperestrogenic condition will be there. So when ovaries are not responding, there will not be any growth of the follicle is not growing, and follicles are not producing the estrogen hormone, so definitely the estrogen levels falls, and which may lead to the amenorrheic condition. So these are all the causes of the ovaries, that is ovarian factors causing the amenorrhea. Next, coming to the pituitary factors. Pituitary factors means the factors which are seen or lies in the pituitary, because HPO axis plays a very important role, no? Hypothalamo pituitary ovarian axis. So pituitary factors includes the adenoma like prolactinoma, Cushing syndrome, acromegaly, Sheehan syndrome, etc. So in adenoma, what happens in prolactinoma, microadenoma usually associated with the hyperprolactinemia. It either inhibits the ovarian steroidogenesis directly, or it inhibits the pituitary gonadotrophin's release. And in cases of Sheehan's etc. syndrome, what happens, there is a partial or complete destruction of the pituitary. Here there is destruction of the pituitary. See, in Sheehan's disease, pituitary is destroyed either completely or partially by the ischemia or the loss of blood supply caused by the venous thrombosis following the severe PPH or shock. So if a woman undergone severe PPH, that is a postpartum hemorrhage and shock following her previous deliveries, then after that there are chances of the ischemia to the pituitary leading to the destruction of the pituitary cells. So the principal hormones affected are the growth hormone, gonadotrophins, FSH, adrenocorticotrophins, and the prolactin. Next is about the hypothalamic factors. Yes, HPO axis, as I have already mentioned, hypothalamo-pituitary ovarian axis should be intact and it should be functional. So then only there will be cycles, normal cycles will be there. So in hypothalamo Hypothalamic factors includes the following like psychogenic shock, stress, anorexia nervosa, strenuous exercise, pseudocytosis, etc. So all these things like shock, if she is in shock, stress, anorexia nervosa means she'll not feel like to have food because to maintain the body image, and if she's working very hard. And pseudocytosis means it is a condition where the patient has a false belief that she is pregnant even though she is not pregnant. So that condition is called as pseudocytosis. So all these inhibit the release of GnRH or affect the dopamine metabolism, and there is low level of estrogen and LH, but FSH levels remains normal. Then next is about the congenital malformations like and even in trauma like accident cases, if she has undergone accident or any surgery or any radiotherapy for any other reasons, infections like tubercular or sarcoid granulomas, tumors like craniopharyngiomas, meningioma, etc., tumors if present in the hypothalamus, these all lead to the hypogonadotrophic hypogonadism condition. Hypogonadotrophic and hypogonadism condition, that means both the gonadotrophins and gonads are producing the less hormones, and there may be hyperprolactinemia, but the prolactin level may be increased due to the altered dopamine inhibition. Tumors of the hypothalamus or pituitary need surgical excision. If there are any tumor present or any extra growth present in the hypothalamus and pituitary, those are to be removed or surgically excised, or radiotherapy. It can be burned with the help of a radiotherapy also. And the management needs a team approach including a neurosurgeon, a radiotherapist, and an endocrinologist. The next is about the adrenal factors. Adrenal tumor of the hyperplasia and Cushing syndrome. Adrenal tumor, again these two problems can lead to the excess androgens, which opposes the effect of estrogen on the endometrium, and the same thing happens just like in cases of PCOS. Then thyroid factors includes the hypothyroid state. If a woman is suffering from hypothyroidism, then she may not get her cycles correctly, or she may have oligomenorrhea or amenorrhea, secondary amenorrhea. Why? Because of that raised TSH, thyroid stimulating hormone is raised, and hyperprolactinemia is also seen in that case by direct action of TRH on the galactophore cells in the pituitary. That's why she will not get her cycles regularly. So you have to treat this condition first to get the normal cycles in the woman. Then general diseases, even general health can affect the normal pattern of menstruation. If she is suffering from malnutrition, tuberculosis, chronic nephritis, or diabetes, so these all conditions probably affect the HPO axis. So malnutrition, if she is very malnourished, underweight, suffering from tuberculosis, again it is because of the tuberculosis she may become malnourished. And or in any chronic nephritis condition, diabetes also can cause the malnutrition, or in the diabetic also the patient becomes very weak because of the diabetic. So all this can affect the HPO axis. Then iatrogenic includes like contraceptive pills, post pill amenorrhea. Some women develop amenorrhea after taking any contraceptive pills because of the suppression of the GnRH release. And psychotropic phenothiazine derivative drugs like dopamine receptor blocking agents raise the prolactin level. And antihypertensive drugs like reserpine or dopamine agonist. If she is hypertensive and taking the antihypertensive medicines like reserpine and dopamine agonist, then the dopamine depleting agents raise the prolactin level. So what happens, these antihypertensive drugs, especially the dopamine antagonist, they raise the level of the prolactin. So what happens, my hyperprolactinemia will be there, and hyperprolactinemia suppresses the GnRH, or the you can say it suppresses the release of FSH and LH, leading to the amenorrheic condition. So this is maybe the probable causes. Coming to the common causes, these are all the causes of secondary amenorrhea. Coming to the commonest cause of secondary amenorrhea, the commonest causes of secondary amenorrhea can be classified into again five main types: hypothalamus, pituitary, ovary, uterine, and systemic. Systemic include malnutrition, hypothyroid state, and diabetes. Hypothalamus includes stress, post pill, amenorrhea, sudden change in the weight, either too much loss or too much gain. See, if a woman lose too much of weight suddenly, again she may get the amenorrhea. If she put on the weight again, like too much of weight, not a little weight of it, too much of weight gain, too much of weight loss can also lead to the amenorrhea. Psychotropic or antihypertensive drugs if she is taking, then it may also cause amenorrhea. Then pituitary adenomas and Sheehan syndrome. Ovaries, which is a very common ovary problem, is very common. Ovarian factors are the, you can say, the commonest cause of secondary amenorrhea nowadays, especially in girls. That is a PCOS and premature ovarian failure. These are the commonest causes nowadays. And uterine cause includes the synechia. Systemic we have covered, like malnutrition, hypothyroid state, and diabetes, etc. So these are the causes. Coming to the clinical feature and diagnosis of each cause. Tubercular endometritis. In this case, how to diagnose this means usually a family history or the past history of tuberculosis in the patient itself is seen, or sometimes it may be present or may not present. Then you have to go for the physical and pelvic examination in such cases. So the diagnosis is confirmed, but it is again not informative. So you have to diagnose it with the help of a diagnostic curettage or by laparotomy or laparoscopy. Then uterine synechia or Escherman syndrome. Escherman syndrome is nothing but the formation of adhesions following the post-abortal or the purpurar curettage, and also following the diagnostic curettage in DUB cases. So what you have to do here is, the menstrual abnormalities are seen in this case. PCT, that is a progesterone challenge test, is negative. HSG shows the honeycomb appearance. Here you will see the honeycomb appearance with the help of HSG, hysterosalpingography, and hysteroscopic. You can directly visualize the uterus with the help of a hysteroscope, which reveals the extent of adhesions directly. So this is a method of diagnosis. And next, ovarian factors, PCOS. PCOS is also called as polycystic ovarian syndrome. It is originally described in 1935. See, it is discovered in 1935 by Stein and Leventhal as a syndrome manifested by amenorrhea, hirsutism, and obesity associated with enlarged polycystic ovaries. So PCOS, which is a very commonest problem nowadays in girls and in working women. So what is it? It is not a symptom, it is a syndrome. Syndrome is, it consists of many signs and symptoms. So the important one is amenorrhea, if a girl is suffering from amenorrhea. Then second is hirsutism. Hirsutism is the facial hairs, appearance of the facial hairs or chin hairs, like that. And obesity. Hirsutism, amenorrhea, obesity associated with the enlarged polycystic ovaries. If you send her for ultrasonography scan, then you will find her ovaries are enlarged because of the cyst. Multiple cysts are seen in the ovaries. So this condition is called as PCOS or polycystic ovarian syndrome. So it is a heterogeneous disorder which is characterized by the excess androgen production by the ovaries mainly. So here what happens, because of the cyst which produces excess of androgens, and it is a multifactorial and polygenic condition also. So it is caused by so many factors, and you cannot say this PCOS causes this much, that much, but it is a multifactorial and polygenic condition. Diagnosis is based upon the presence of any two of the following three criteria. So how to diagnose PCOS? So these are the criteria to diagnose PCOS. See, these 3 points are there. If a girl or a lady have any 2 points out of these, then you can say she is suffering from PCOS. So now let us see what are those points. First is the oligo and anovulation. Oligo-ovulation or anovulation, that means she is ovulating in less frequently, that is oligo-ovulation. And anovulation, how you will come to know? With the help of the menstrual cycle. No, first you have to ask the menstrual history. If she is suffering from oligomenorrhea or secondary amenorrhea, then you can guess it is a oligo ovulation or anovulation condition. The second diagnostic criteria is hyperandrogenism. Hyperandrogenism, how to diagnose hyperandrogenism? First, clinical way. Clinical means with the help of excess androgens. What happens? There will be production of the facial hairs, that is hirsutism. Hirsutism will be seen, and the baldness, male pattern baldness will be there in a female. Or biochemical, you can send for the serum values, establishment of the serum testosterone, etc. The testosterones are usually raised in such cases. Then third point is the PCOS, that is a polycystic ovary seen on the ultrasonography. You can directly see the cyst on the ovary. So these are the three criteria. If out of these three, if two are present, then you can diagnose this case as a case of PCOS. Other etiologies, CAS, thyroid dysfunction, hyperprolactinemia, Cushing syndromes are to be excluded. Before diagnosing PCOS, you have to rule out other factors like thyroid dysfunction, whether she is suffering from any thyroid problem or not, any Cushing problem, hyperprolactinemia, etc. You have to rule out. Incidence varies between 0.5 to 4%. More common is among infertile women, and PCOS is also one of the cause of infertility. It is prevalent in young reproductive age group, 20 to 30%. PCOS may be seen in about 20% of the normal women also. Pathology, typically the ovaries are enlarged. So you can see the ovaries are enlarged in size. Ovarian volume is increased to more than or equal to 10 centimeter cube. Stroma is increased. Capsule is thickened, pearly white in color. Presence of multiple, that is more than or equal to 12 follicular cysts measuring about 2 to 9 mm in diameter are crowded around the cortex. So how you will diagnose this case? So you have to find the multiple cyst measuring about 2 to 9 mm. See, in this diagram you can see it is a laparoscopic view of the polycystic changes of the ovary. Multiple small peripheral cysts are seen on the ovarian surface. You can see small cysts are seen. This is the ovary and this is attached the capsule of it, and here you can see the small cysts are seen on the ovaries. So this is a laparoscopic view of the polycystic changes of the ovary. So here you can find all these things. Histologically, if you go for histological examination, there is thickening of the tunica albuginea, which is the outermost layer of the ovaries. Cysts are the follicles at varying stages of maturation in atresia. There is theca cell hypertrophy. Patient may present with the features of diabetes mellitus also. Clinical features: the patient complains of increasing obesity, abdominal, especially the fat around the abdomen is increased up to 50%. So common symptoms complaint of a patient is obesity, menstrual abnormality 70% in the form of oligomenorrhea, amenorrhea, DUB, and infertility. Presence of hirsutism and acne are the important features. 70% virilization is rare. You can see here in this diagram hirsutism case. Acne is seen on the face of woman, and you can see here the facial hairs also. And one more condition you can find here, which is called as acanthosis nigricans. Acanthosis nigricans is nothing but the blackening of the back of the neck. Back of the neck becomes black. So these are the features seen in a PCOS case: hirsutism, acne, acanthosis nigricans. So these are the clinical features. Acanthosis nigricans is characterized by the specific skin changes due to insulin resistance. Why this blackening of the neck occurs is because of the insulin resistance. The skin is thickened, pigmented. Commonly affected sites are the nape of the neck, inner thighs, groin, and axilla. So not only the nape of the neck, but the inner thighs, groin, and axilla of the woman becomes blackish because of the insulin resistance. And this condition is called as acanthosis nigricans. Then one more condition is there. It is called as Heron syndrome. Heron syndrome is in patients with PCOS is characterized by hyperandrogenism, insulin resistance, and acanthosis nigricans. Internal examination reveals bilateral enlarged cystic ovaries, which may not be revealed due to obesity. If you want to go for histological examination, but you cannot perform the the internal examination, then you cannot perform the internal examination easily. Suppose if you want to go for the abdominal examination or the bimanual examination, you cannot find the bulky ovaries easily because of the excessive fat, or you can say the thick abdomen will be there and fat deposition will be there, as the central obesity is common in such patients. So better to diagnose it with the help of ultrasonograph. Investigation: yes, first investigation is sonography. Transvaginal sonography is especially useful in the obese patients. Ovaries are enlarged in volume more than 10 centimeter cube. Increased number of peripheral arranged cysts, that is 2 to 9 mm, or are seen. Mostly the cyst of size more than 12 cysts you will find, and that to the size of the cyst varies from 2 to 9 mm. 28.3 diagram I'll show you. See here, this is the ultrasonic picture of a PCOS case. In the color Doppler scan showing the numerous small cysts with increased ovarian stroma and the vascularity typical of a PCOS. Here in the stroma, vascularity is also increased, which can be seen in the color Doppler scan, and here you can see the small cyst. So minimum 12 cyst will be there, and the measurement of the cyst is around 2 to 9 mm in diameter. So this is for the first investigation. Second investigation, we have to go for the blood investigations like LH level. LH level is elevated, or in the ratio LH to FSH is more than 2:1. Raised level of estrogen and estrone. The estrone level is markedly elevated. SHBG level is also reduced. Hyperandrogenism, mainly from the ovary but less from the adrenals. Adrenostenedione is raised. Raised serum testosterone. Testosterone level is more than 150 ng per dl, and DHEAS may marginally elevated. Insulin resistance IR, raising fasting insulin levels more than 25 MIU per ml. Fasting glucose per insulin ratio is less than 4.5, suggests the insulin resistance. Levels of serum insulin response more than 300 micro IU per ml at 2 hours post glucose load suggests severe insulin resistance. Then third method is with the help of laparoscopy. Bilateral polycystic ovaries are the characteristics of PCOS. You can find the bilateral polycystic ovaries in the laparoscopy. So these are the investigation: USG, then hormonal assay, and the laparoscopy. Next, about the pathophysiology of PCOS. Exact pathophysiology of PCOS is not clearly understood. It may be discussed under the following headings. One is hypothalamo-pituitary compartment abnormality. Second, with the androgen axis. Third, anovulation. Fourth, obesity and insulin resistance. Fifth, the long-term consequences. HPO axis in the hypothalamo-pituitary compartment in PCOS, there will be increased pulse frequency of GnRH leads to the increased pulse frequency of LH. GnRH is preferential to LH rather than FSH. Increased pulse frequency and amplitude of LH results in tonically elevated level of LH. FSH level is not increased. Increased free estrogen due to the reduced sex hormone binding globulin. SHBG bears positive feedback relationship to LH, and the LH and FSH ratio is increased. The second abnormality is abnormal androgen excess. Abnormal regulation of the androgen forming enzyme is thought to be the main cause for excess production of androgen from the ovaries and adrenals. The principal sources of androgens are ovary, adrenals, systemic metabolic alteration. Ovary produces the excess androgens due to the stimulation of the theca cells by the high LH and P450C17 enzyme dysfunction, hyperfunction, defective aromatization of the androgen to estrogen, stimulation of the theca cells by IGF-1 factor. So these are the excess cause. Adrenals are stimulated to produce excess androgens by the stress, P450C17 enzyme hyperfunction and associated high prolactin levels. Systemic metabolic alteration includes hyperinsulinemia, which is causes by the stimulation of the theca cells to produce more androgens. Insulin inhibits the hepatic synthesis of SHBG, resulting in more free levels of androgens. Features suggestive of insulin resistance are BMI more than 25 kg per meter square. So if she is obese, her BMI is more than 25. Acanthosis nigricans and waist to hip ratio is more than 0.85. So waist to hip ratio here you have to measure. Hyperprolactinemia, in about 20% cases there will be mild elevation of the prolactin. Prolactin is also mildly elevated due to the increased pulsatility of GnRH or due to dopamine deficiency or both. The prolactin further stimulates the adrenal androgen production. See, in this diagram you can see the acanthosis nigricans in PCOS patients. Anovulation, because of low FSH level, follicular growth is arrested at different phases of maturation, that is 2 to 10 mm diameter. The net effect is diminished estradiol and increased inhibin production due to the elevated LH. There is hypertrophy of the theca cells and more androgens are produced either from the theca cells or stroma. So this is about the anovulation. Obesity and insulin resistance. Here obesity is recognized as an important factor because excess production of the androgens. Obesity is also associated with the reduced SHBG. SHBG is also reduced in this case of obese patients. It also induces the insulin resistance and hyperinsulinemia. which in turn increases the gonadal androgen production. PCOS is thought to have a dominant role of inheritance, as about 50% of the first degree relatives have PCOS. See, PCOS is familiar. If you find a family history is in of PCOS, then it runs in the first degree relatives. So PCOS is there. And one more thing is the what happens here is the increased central fat, body fat, leads to the android obesity, and obesity can leads to the so many problems. Long-term consequences in a patient suffering from PCOS includes excess androgens, mainly the androstenedione, either from the ovaries or adrenal, or periphery aromatized to estrone E1. There is concomitant diminished in the SHBG. See, what happens here is androgens are increased and estrone is produced, SHBG is reduced, cumulative excess unbound estrogens, and estrone results in the tonic hyperestrogenic state. There is endometrial hyperplasia. Here androgens are more, SHBG is reduced, and because of more androgens there will be hyperestrogenic state, and which leads to the endometrial hyperplasia. Probable late sequelae of PCOS includes obese women more than BMI 30 are at increased risk of developing diabetes mellitus 15% due to the insulin resistance in future, and risk of developing endometrial carcinoma due to the persistently elevated level of estrogen is also there. Risk of hypertension and cardiovascular diseases are more, as dyslipidemia, that is low level of HDL high, and high level of LDL and high level of triglycerides is the most commonest metabolic abnormality in the women with PCOS. And obstructive sleep apnea is can also be seen in the PCOS cases. So then coming to the next condition, which is a premature ovarian insufficiency. Here in this case, what happened, premature ovarian insufficiency or failed is defined when the ovarian failure occurs before the age of 40. So before reaching the age of 40, when the follicles are depleted, this condition is called as the premature ovarian insufficiency or premature ovarian follicle. It occurs in about 1% of the female population, and causes may be genetic like Turner syndrome, gonadal dysgenesis, trisomy 18, etc. Autoimmune causes may also be there like autoantibodies, lupus, anticoagulants, ANI, antinuclear antibodies, and different infections like mumps, tuberculosis, iatrogenic radiation therapy, chemotherapy, surgery, metabolic galactosemia, etc. Environmental, smoking, FSH receptors absent or post receptor defect may also be seen in idiopathic. Diagnosis, history of amenorrhea in less than 35 years of age. Serum gonadotropin levels where the FSH level is increased to more than 40 ml per international unit is high. Then serum estrogen level is low, less than 20 pg per ml. Karyotype abnormality may also be seen. Organ specific humoral antibodies. Ovarian biopsy is not essential to the diagnosis. In autoimmune variety, there is the prefollicular lymphocyte infiltration. In the resistant ovarian syndrome, the follicles are present. FSH receptor is either absent or defective. Patient present with amenorrhea, primary or secondary. Possibility of autoimmune disorders should be considered below the age of 35. In younger patient age below 30, karyotype is to be done to rule out the chromosome abnormalities. Next is about the masculinizing tumors, like presence of any tumor which leads to the horniness of Weiss, hirsutism, enlargement of clitoris, etc. Abdominal and pelvic examination reveals any adnexal tumor, any tumor present on the adnexe. So in such cases, serum testosterone level is elevated to more than 2 ng per ml, while DHEAS level is normal. Hypothalamic factors like of amenorrhea. Hypothalamic dysfunction is one of the major causes of true secondary amenorrhea. There is often history suggestive of the stress, exercise, rapid gain or loss of weight. Weight-related amenorrhea. Female athletes, runners, ballet dancers are under constant stress and performing the strenuous exercises, and they have high level of corticotropin releasing hormone. The levels of ACTH, cortisol, and the androgenous opioids are high in them. Leptin levels are low in them. CRH, that is the corticotropin releasing hormone, directly inhibits the GnRH secretion via the raised endogenous opioids. They are most likely to develop amenorrhea due to decrease in the GnRH pulse frequency. So here in this case, what happens? Menstruation becomes irregular when the BMI is less than 19. So BMI, if it is less than 19, then also amenorrhea will be there. If it is more than 25, then also problems may occur. So BMI should be maintained in the normal range, that is in between to 19, that is in between 19 to 24. These subjects are hypoestrogenic and have got elevated prolactin and cortisol levels. Leptin levels is found low. Anorexia nervosa, it is a state of self-imposed starvation. It is a psychosexual problem where the patient suffers from the illusion of excessive body fat. That means the patient feels like she is very obese and is distorted body image. She is very conscious of her body image. That's why she develops a psychosexual problem. Patient denies food and is markedly underweight. She becomes underweight. Amenorrhea is the rules. Constipation is common. Release of GnRH is affected. FSH and LH are low. Cortisol levels is high. This may be a life-threatening disorders. Obesity. Obese women so often suffer from irregular menstrual bleeding. Excess number of fat cells in the obese women convert peripheral androgens to estrogen. There is also low level of sex hormone binding globulin, which helps free androgens to be converted to estrone. Obesity with PCOS can cause oligomenorrhea or amenorrhea. Next is about the Kallmann syndrome. Here the embryologically GnRH neurons develop in the ectodermal olfactory placard before they migrate finally to the hypothalamus. So this is the problem occurs in the embryonic state itself. GnRH neurons are absent due to the partial or complete agenesis of the olfactory bulb. So this disorders is characterized by what happens in this. What are the features? It is characterized by hypogonadotrophic hypogonadism, anosmia. Anosmia means loss of the sense of smell because of the olfactory problem or agenesis of the olfactory bulb. She cannot feel the smell, and associated with the color blindness also. Color blindness, hypogonadotrophic hypogonadism, and anosmia. These are the features of Kallmann syndrome. And there may be associated cleft lip and the palate. Patient present with the primary amenorrhea. Mode of inheritance is due to the variety of gene mutation in the KL gene. It is an autosomal dominant recessive fashion. Menstruation may be induced with the combined estrogen and progesterone therapy. Induction of ovulation is seen. Pituitary factors includes adenomas. Adenoma, either micro or macro, is associated with the improper lactation, galactorrhea, secondary amenorrhea, and infertility. Here, serum prolactin levels are raised beyond 100 ng per ml. X-ray sella turcica may reveal space occupying lesion. CT or MRI scan is more informative. Hyperprolactinemia and amenorrhea. Prolactin inhibits GnRH pulse secretion. Gonadotrophin levels are suppressed. Hyperprolactinemia inhibits over and steroidogenesis. Hyperprolactinemia causes secondary amenorrhea in about 30% of women, and there is anovulation and hypogonadotrophic hypogonadism in this case. Then pituitary adenomas or prolactinomas. Prolactin is a protein hormone. So here what happens? Here the extra pituitary sites of prolactin production includes the decidua, endometrium, lungs, etc. Prolactin secretion from the anterior pituitary is under the inhibitory control of dopamine. Hyperprolactinemia is commonly due to the pituitary adenomas, microadenoma or macroadenoma, and the normal plasma level of prolactin is increased in this case. Causes of hyperprolactinemia includes the physiological, again the stress, exercise, pregnancy, stimulation of nipples, sleep, idiopathic, etc. Then hypothalamic pituitary causes includes craniopharyngioma, tuberculosis, hypothyroidism, multiple endocrine disorders, pituitary adenomas, resection of pituitary stalk. Drugs includes phenothiazine, metoclopramide, methyl dopa, reserpine, antidepressant, estrogens. Others includes renal failure, cirrhosis of liver, PCOS, idiopathic. Diagnosis of the pituitary adenomas. Pituitary adenomas, here the prolactin level is more than 100 ng per ml. It is also always associated with prolactinomas. And here MRI or CT can also show the tumors present. Then Sheehan syndrome, here there is a history of severe PPH, postpartum hemorrhage, or shock or severe infection. Depending on the degree of the anterior pituitary necrosis, features vary. The common manifestations are failing lactation, loss of pubic and axillary hair, lethargy, hypotension, secondary amenorrhea, atrophy of the breast and genitalia. Gonadotrophin levels is low, so also T3, T4 and cortisol. The hormones affected in order to frequency are GH, growth hormone, prolactin, gonadotrophies, FSH and LH, TSH and ACTH. Hypernatremia may be present. The syndrome may develop slowly over 8 to 10 years time. Management is a replacement therapy with appropriate hormones including corticosteroids, thyroid, etc. Fertility can be achieved in these women with HMG and SCG regimens. Clomiphene is ineffective in cases of Sheehan syndrome. Adrenal tumors or hyperplasia causes secondary amenorrhea, infertility, acne, features of defeminization followed by virilization, hoarseness of voice, hirsutism, enlargement of clitoris, etc. Here serum level of DHEAS is raised. Serum testosterone is more than 200 mg per ml, which is a suggestive of an ovarian or androgen secreting tumor, whereas DHEAS level is more than 800 mg per ml. It is a suggestive of an adrenal tumor. So it can also be diagnosed on the ultrasonography, endovaginal or abdominal. Late onset of congenital adrenal hyperplasia can also lead to the problem. Here also the serum level of 17 hydroxyprogesterone is raised to more than 800 mg per ml, which is a diagnosis of this condition. Cushing syndrome. In Cushing syndrome, androgens are formed. There is excess production of ACTH from the anterior pituitary or from the ectopic sites. So increased ACTH causes hyperstimulation of the adrenal cortex, leading to its hyperplasia, which in turn leads to the excess production of cortisol and androgen. ACTH independent causes includes adrenal adenoma, cancer, which may be idiopathic, or the adrenal tumor. And symptoms includes weakness, oligomenorrhea, amenorrhea, acne, and hirsutism. Signs are moon phases, centripetal obesity, and abdominal striaria, that is stretch marks on the abdomen. The syndrome is often associated with hypertension, osteoporosis, insulin dependent diabetes. Screening test includes the dexamethasone 1 mg ingested at 11 pm, serum cortisol obtained at 8 am the following day. The level less than 5 mg per 100 ml essentially rules out the Cushing syndrome. Then thyroid dysfunction. Both hypo and hyperthyroidism states may produce a secondary amenorrhea and anovulation. The former it is common in the hypothyroidism condition. Serum test TSH level is raised, while T3, T4 levels are lowered in the hypothyroid state. Then post-pill amenorrhea. It is observed in about 1% of the women following the use of contraceptive pills. And here the spontaneous resumption of the menstruation occurs in majority of cases after a varying period of time. General diseases like malnutrition, TB, diabetes, and chronic nephropathy can cause the problem. So diagnostic criteria varies according to the condition. In case of TB, you can go for the chest X-ray, blood sugar in diabetes, urine analysis, and blood urea in the chronic nephritis conditions. Coming to the investigation to diagnose the cause and to guide the management protocol to restore the menstruation and fertility in the woman. You have to start with the general. First, a proper history is to be taken. Mood of onset, sudden changes in the environment, sudden change in the weight, history of all these things to be asked. Intake of the any drugs, antihypertensive or psychotropic drugs, appearance of abnormal manifestations like acne, hirsutism, improper lactation, headache, visual disturbances, hot flashes, etc. is to be inquired. Obstetric history is to be asked about the previous D&C procedures, cesarean section, severe PPH or curettage, prolonged lactation, medical history of TB, diabetes, chronic nephritis, overthyroid, etc. Family history of premature menopause, etc. is to be asked. General examination is to be done. To be noted the following points like nutritional status, extreme emaciation or the mark obesity, presence of acne or hirsutism, discharge of milk from the breast. Abdominal examination includes the presence of striaria associated with obesity related to Cushing syndrome, a mass in the lower abdomen. Pelvic examination includes enlargement of the clitoris, adnexal mass, suggestive of osteomas or ovarian tumor is to be done. Then here TSH level, X-ray, etc. should be done. And the one test you can perform here, it is called as PCT or progesterone challenge test. If the withdrawal bleeding occurs, it proves you have to give the progesterone, you have to wait. If the bleeding occurs, then it indicates the intact HPO axis, there is adequate androgens present, and anatomically patent outflow tract and endometrium is responsive. Estimation of the serum testosterone, prolactin, TSH, oral GTT, and fasting lipid profile should be done in cases of PCOS. If the withdrawal bleeding fails to occur, it signifies lack of progesterone receptors in the endometrium or diseased endometrium. Then you have to go for estrogen progesterone challenge test, which is done with the help of estrogen and progesterone combination, that is ethinyl estradiol 0.02 mg or conjugated equine estrogen 1.25 mg is to be taken daily for 25 days. Medroxyprogesterone acetate 10 mg daily is added from the day 15 to 25th. Alternatively, one course of oral contraceptive pill is given to observe whether withdrawal bleeding occurs or not. If there is no bleeding, it signifies local endometrium lesions such as uterine synechia. It is to be confirmed with the help of HSG or hysteroscopy. If the withdrawal bleeding occurs, it indicates the presence of responsive endometrium, but the exogenous estrogen production is inadequate. As such, to determine whether the underlying fault lies in the ovary or in the pituitary, one has to go for the third step, which is the estimation of serum gonadotropins is to be done. If the level of serum FSH more than 40, then the case may be of premature ovarian failure or the resistant ovarian syndrome. Ovarian biopsy is not recommended to confirm the diagnosis or to differentiate the two entities. If, however, the level of FSH is either normal or low, it signifies the pituitary dysfunction. Whether the disturbed pituitary function is primary or secondary to hypothalamus, one has to move for the fourth step, which is the GnRH dynamic test. Here, with the GnRH administration, there is a rise of pituitary gonadotropins. It is probably in case of hypothalamic dysfunction. In case of pituitary disorder, there will be no rise of gonadotropin. The result is, however, inconclusive. If possible, pituitary tumor has to be excluded by taking the X-ray of sella turcica, CT scan or MRI, and even though the prolactin levels are normal. So these are the methods of diagnosing. The next is about the management. No abnormality detected, then you have to go for with the no treatment is required. If there is no abnormality, you can start with the androgenous and estrogen combined. Oral combined steroidal contraceptives can be prescribed to be continued for at least 3 cycles with low endogenous estrogen, ethinyl estradiol 0.02 mg or equine conjugated estrogen 1.25 mg daily is to be taken for 25 days. Medroxyprogesterone 10 mg daily is added from the day 16 to 25. And if the patient is anxious for fertility, then have to go start the fertility treatment and go for the husband semen analysis. Cases with the detectable cause, if anxiety and stress is there, it is to be corrected by assurance psychotherapy. Systemic illnesses and malnutrition is to be improved. Exercise induced amenorrhea is cured with the limitation of activity and in an appropriate diet. PCOS is to be treated accordingly depending on the symptoms of a patient. So you have to rule out which symptoms are present in this, and is usually weight reduction in obese patient is the first line of treatment. Body mass index should be less than 25. It improves the menstrual disorders, infertility, impaired glucose intolerance, hyperandrogenemia, hirsutism, acne, obesity. Weight reduction improves the metabolic syndrome also. Fertility, if not desired, then you can give the combined oral contraceptive pills. For hirsutism cases, you can start the anti-androgens, that is cyproterone acetate, spironolactone and flutamide may be used. For metabolic syndrome, metformin, it increases the insulin sensitivity, decrease the weight and BMI, and reduces LDL cholesterol, blood pressure. So you can give the metformin also. In hyperinsulinemia cases, metformin is used as an oral insulin sensitizer. In cases of endometrial hyperplasia, you can start again with the combined oral contraceptive pills is the treatment of choice to prevent endometrial hyperplasia and abnormal bleeding. If the woman is desirous to pregnancy, chronic anovulation is the commonest cause of infertility, then you can start with the ovulation induction with the help of a clomiphene citrate following correction of the biochemical abnormalities. Then in unresponsive cases, you can start pure FSH and HMG, etc. Insulin sensitizers, women with PCOS and hyperinsulinemia with body weight BMI more than 25 ovulate satisfactory when clomiphene is combined with metformin. Metformin improves the metabolic syndrome by reducing all the parameters. So you can give metformin 500 mg thrice daily. The surgery, laparoscopic ovarian drilling LOD is done for cases found resistant to the medical therapy, or you can even go for the bariatric surgery. For hyperprolactinemia or excessive prolactin levels or inappropriate galactorrhea, medically you can give the bromocriptine drug is the first drug of choice. Cabergoline is also given. The dose is 0.25 mg or 0.5 mg once or twice weekly. It causes shrinkage of the tumor. With therapy, prolactin levels usually decreases within 2 to 3 weeks of the treatment, and you can go for the surgery if you find any tumors or when the medical treatment failed. For premature ovarian failure, here you cannot give any such treatment, so you have to go for hormone replacement or IVF with a donor suicide. Adrenal disorders, treatment of the Cushing syndrome is to be treated properly. Then adult adrenal hyperplasia is to be treated properly by giving dexamethasone with a dose of 0.25 to 0.5 mg. Hypothyroid state is to be treated by giving thyroxine. Hyperandrogenic state is to be given here by using oral contraceptives, glucocorticoids and anti-androgen preparation. Uterine synechia, here you have to remove the adhesions with the help of adhesiolysis followed by the insertion of IUCD. Then you can start the oral contraceptive pills for 3 months. Ovarian tumor, appropriate surgery is to be done. Anorexia nervosa, here behavioral therapy, psychiatric consultation and hospitalization is needed in severe cases. Results, the following conclusion are made about the fate of the patient having amenorrhea. In primary amenorrhea, more investigations are often done to find out the cause with minimum effect. In fact, in most of the cases where the menstruation occurs are the young girls whose menarche is delayed in onset. In secondary amenorrhea, with comparative fewer investigation, the results is satisfactory, but the percentage of cures falls steep as the duration of amenorrhea lengthens. However, with or without treatment, spontaneous reception of menstruation occurs in about 60% cases of secondary amenorrhea of more than 1 year of duration. So this completes the topic of amenorrhea. Thank you.